Welcome back to Let's Make a Game, the channel where we are making a computer role-playing game using the free program Twine and the SugarCube format for Twine. I have already shown you in this series two different ways to generate the attributes for a player character. I've shown you how to do it by sort of randomly rolling, or the equivalent of rolling, and I've shown you how to do it by allowing the player to choose their attributes. And in this video, I'm going to show you a third method where the initial values are random, but then it's adjusted so that the total attributes always add up to the same number. But first, I want to tell you why I've chosen to create a system that works like that. It's because I was working on a system for interacting with monsters. So deciding what happened, whether you get ambushed, or they tell you to go back the way you came, or they demand money from you, or they are friendly and agree to trade with you, etc., etc. And that system seemed to work better if it was based on a roll which was then compared to a particular attribute that the player might have, depending on which choice that they'd made, or sometimes more than one attribute. And that raised a problem, which was that if the player could choose their attributes, then there might be a particular option that relies on charisma, say, and that seems like that makes it a bit easy to just go, well, I'll just have the maximum possible charisma, and I'll just choose the option that uses charisma every time. And because my charisma is will be high, it'll generally work. And that didn't seem particularly fun. So it seemed like what I wanted was for the player to have random attributes, so that the best option for them wasn't the same one each time they played the game. But what if they have random attributes and all their attributes are low? They might be in a situation where there's no choice they can make that's a good choice. Or if their attributes are really high, they might be in a situation where there's no choice they can make that's a bad choice. And again, neither of those seemed like very fun options. So it seemed like what I wanted was random attributes, but they're sort of equally good each time. Of course, that's an ideal, and it will depend on, that's something that'd have to be play tested. But it seemed like that was what I was trying to, or what would work best for what I wanted. So that's why I've done it. I'll show you what it looks like. It doesn't look very different. It's one of those things that sort of changes things under the hood, as it were. We have this screen, which you've seen before, or you will have if you've been following these videos, where you get to choose which race you want. Let's say choose a dwarf. And we get, in the sidebar, we get the different attributes they have. Now, if you add the first 5 up, I'll just do it now. We get 10 and 16 is 26. 26 and 6 is 32. 32 and 6 is 38. 38 and 12 is 50. And in fact, if you were to create another character, which I will now do just to demonstrate, and it can be the same or different, these 5, not size, but these first 5 should add up to 50. Let's try it again. 13 and 5 is 18. 18 and 11 is 29. 29 and 4 is 33. 33 and 17 is again 50. So it's doing, we can tell that it's doing what is desired, which I of course happen to know that it's set up so that the first 5 attributes should always add up to 50. Now, the reason that size isn't counted in the total is that, unlike the other attributes, a high size is an advantage in particular things but it's a disadvantage in other things. So size doesn't count towards the total. If you were looking closely, you might have noticed that the numbers sort of changed, so they settled into their total. I'll do it again, and I'll see if you can see it. Yeah, just briefly, you can see a couple of the numbers changed before they settled into their totals. So that's the only sort of visual difference that you would ever notice. So that's why I'm trying to do this, and that's what it looks like. I'm going to spend the rest of the video showing you the code. So we have, and some of these things I've already shown you, they're not very different, so I won't go into those ones in detail. I'll only show you the things that are different in detail. So we have story caption. This is, as I've said before, a special page which always does this in the sidebar, and that is the code that governs printing out the little mini character sheet. Sorry, I just realised I told you why size isn't counted in the total. The reason that rerolls aren't counted in the total is at the moment the character always gets 3 rerolls, so it doesn't need to be counted. So that's basically as it was before. We have the data, which again is as it was before. AN is the number of attributes. AT is the names of the attributes. BA is how many points the attributes should total up to. AV is their current values. MA and MI are the maximum and minimum values for the race that the player chooses. So, for example, dwarf here with MA, which of course is the maximum, we have 20, 15, 15, 20, 10, and 8, and that tells you that a dwarf can have a maximum strength of 20, intelligence of 15, dexterity of 15, constitution of 20, charisma of 10, and size of 8. And then minimum MI is the same, but it's the minimum. So 5, 3, 3, 5, 1, and 3. A dwarf's charisma can go down as low as 1, and their size can go down as low as 3, and so on. Those are the attributes that are the most directly relevant to what we're doing here. So once we've set up those attributes, we go to the screen where the player chooses their race. This is the same as it was before. It just prints the pictures of the different races, and the player clicks on the picture that they choose, and that sets the variable R. And then we roll the attributes. This has got a for loop, which we've done before, which goes through every attribute. Which I just noticed I put a number there. I shouldn't have done that. I should have put AN like that, because if I changed, I mean, that how I had it works for what I've done, but if I changed it, it wouldn't have. If I changed the number of attributes, it wouldn't have worked. So that was a bit careless. So we set AV, which is the attribute value for this character, to a random number that's between the relevant value in the MI array and the relevant value in the MA array. So something between the minimum and the maximum, inclusive. It can be the minimum value, or it can be the maximum value. Then it says if the name of the attribute that we're talking about, now this exclamation mark followed by an equal sign means does not equal. So if the name of the attribute that we're talking about is anything other than size, we should adjust BA by what we've rolled. So remembering that we started with 50 points, and so let's say the result of this random is 12, for example. Well, that's 12 of the 50 points that we've used up, so we would take 12 away from BA. And because it's a for loop, it does it for all of the attributes. And then we go to tweak attributes. And this is the sort of the most new bit, I suppose. If BA is exactly 0, Well, that'll happen if the first 5 attributes add up to exactly 0. Well, then we go to explore, which is to say we go to the main game. We've finished generating a character. We've got it to the total that we want, and we go to explore. But normally that won't be the case. Normally what will happen is we'll have to move attributes up or down, and this is how we do it. So we set Z to be a random number between 1 and an minus 1. In other words, we pick an attribute that's not size. I've made sure to put size at the end. Now, this is fairly complicated looking, but it is actually conceptually quite simple. The first thing I need to explain is math.sign. We've got math.sign bracket $BA unbracket. And that's a new thing. I don't think I've ever used this before. What that means is it is the sign that's in front of the numeric value of BA as a number. In other words, if BA is positive, then math.sign BA will be 1. If BA is negative, then math.sign BA will be -1. And if BA is exactly 0, then math.sign will be exactly 0. But math.sign BA will never be 0, because BA will never be 0, because if it was 0, we would have gone to explore. So if we're in this bit, we know that math.sign BA is always going to be 1 or -1. And what it is conceptually is, are we adding to these attributes because they're too low in total, or are we subtracting from these attributes because they're too high? So let's say we started with a total of 50 and we took off the value that we rolled for each one. If BA is positive, well, that means the attributes we've rolled are too low. And if BA is negative, that means the attributes we rolled are too high, and we've sort of overshot. So what we're doing here is, if the current value of the attribute plus the 1 or -1 that we're currently adding to the attributes to get them to get the total to be 50, if that is less than or equal to the maximum for that attribute and the race that the player has chosen, and if the number plus math sign BA is over or equal to the minimum for the race and the attribute in question, then do these things. So what that means in normal terms is, okay, we're either adding to these attributes or we're subtracting to an attribute. We've chosen an attribute at random. If we were to add or subtract to this attribute, would that still be within the range that is acceptable for this particular race? In other words, we don't want to take the attributes outside of that range. And of course, we could have chosen that can happen, but I've chosen that the attributes will always be within the range that are specified in those arrays in MA and MI. So can we safely adjust this attribute? Well, if we can, then set AVZ plus equals. All that means is set the variable to be the variable plus whatever's over here. Because often when you're setting the value of a variable, it's itself plus some change, and so this is a sort of shorthand way of saying, instead of saying set AVZ equals AVZ plus, we just put plus equals, and of course minus equals is the same thing, except that it's if we wanted to subtract from it. So we set AVZ to be itself plus the sign of BA. We adjust the attribute by this number, and because we're trying to get BA to be 0, we also adjust BA by that number as well, which effectively, now you notice that we've set BA equals BA minus math.sin BA. And if you think about it, that's always going to move BA towards 0, because if it's positive, the sign will be 1, and so BA minus math sin BA will be reduced by 1. And if it's negative, the sign will always be minus 1, and so BA minus math sin BA will be adding to it. So it always, this line moves BA 1 closer to 0. So in other words, if we can adjust the attribute in the relevant way and move BA 1 closer to 0, so we're 1 closer to having finished. And having done that, or if you can't do that, we just do nothing. We'll just pick another attribute to change. But either way, go to tweak attributes. And because we're on tweak attributes, that just means sort of go to the top of the page and start again. And so it will keep going round. I mean, assuming that BA has some value. If BA is 0, it'll just go straight to Explore, of course. But if BA has some value that's not 0, it'll spend as long as it needs to picking an attribute, adjusting it if necessary, moving BA 1 closer to 0 if necessary, until we get to the total that we want. In which, and when we get to the total we want, of course, BA will be 0, and it'll go to Explore. And Explore is just the there's nothing in Explore. Explore is sort of the rest of the game. And so, if you saw in the cases where you could see the attributes changing, that would be because BA was a fairly high number or a fairly low number, and there are sort of enough changes that you could notice it. Because each time it does this, it's because story caption is here. It's also displaying the character sheet as it is. So I could have set it up to not display the character sheet until it was finished, but I quite like that effect of the numbers kind of changing. So I decided to keep it as it was. The way that I would code it so that it didn't display it until the thing was finished was I would have some variable that is set to 1 here. So let's say set xx equals 1, something like that. And then in story caption, instead of saying if r, which means if the player has chosen their race and therefore r has a value, I'd have if xx. And so if I did that, you'd never get that that changing effect, because it wouldn't. The code in here is all within this if, and it would never execute until it got to Explore and xx was set to 1. But I decided that I thought it looked quite good, so I decided to keep it. Anyway, so hopefully having the attributes done this way will make the game more fun. It will move it into that that middle area where there's no chance that things are too good, there's no chance that things are too bad, or at least there's less chance that things are too good or too bad, where the best decision isn't obvious, but there is a best decision that you can work out. And that seems to be the situation that sort of makes a game more engaging. But of course, I have to test the game to see if that's going to happen. But I am probably going to use this method of generating attributes going forward, unless testing indicates that there's sort of something wrong with it. I think I'm going to keep coding with this particular way of starting the game. But anyway, I hope that was of use to at least some of you, and I hope that you will tune in next time.